Hello and welcome everyone to a Guide to Emperor video. The update is finally here and we have been waiting it for so long and it's finally here. And with the new update comes a ton of new game mechanics, map changes and new tags. One of the biggest changes in game is the new governing capacity mechanic. It's going to fundamentally change how we actually play the game. The mechanic was introduced in a dev diary earlier this year and the player base was rightfully a bit confused as we are used to playing the game a certain way. So let's get into it and see what is this new governing capacity. This mechanic is a new way to prevent late game snowballing while also giving something to think about while expanding anywhere. In prior patches, the mechanic of corruption from territories used to serve a similar purpose. As I'm sure you all know, corruption from territories wasn't well received by the EU4 community, and so we can all take a moment to rejoice that the mechanic does not exist in game anymore. Instead, we have the governing capacity. The corruption modifier worked on the basis of how many territories does a nation have over the state limit, so it was all about the number of provinces. Governing capacity, on the other hand, is all about development. It's a measure of how much development can a nation govern at a time. Nations will have governing capacity based on their government rank primarily. You can get a lot more modifiers to it with government reforms, admin tech, and ideas. The base governing capacity for all nations is 200. That means anyone can govern 200 development without any penalties. Kingdoms get a governing cap of plus 200 over the base, so they can govern 400 dev at any time, and empires get a cap of plus 400, so they can govern 600 dev at any time. If we look at Ming here, in 1444, it says the governing cap is 900, you get base of 200, 400 from the empire rank, and plus 300 from the Celestial Empire reform. And we are using 898 out of 900 already at the start. However, the total development is actually 1100. So if the governing cap is just development, why does it say 898 here? That's because of how governing cap is weighted. Not all development is equal. Any development in state is counted as full development. Any development in trade companies is counted as half dev, and any dev in a territory is counted as 25% dev for the purpose of calculating the governing cap. And that's how the 1100 dev in Ming provinces actually comes to 898 governing cap. And you can see the governing cap value for each province here. Say we have 100 total development in a nation. If all that development is in state, it will count as 100 governing capacity for the nation. If that development is not stated, which is to say it's all in territories, it will be weighted at 25%, so it will count as 25 governing capacity. And if the development is in a trade company, it will be weighted at 50%, so it counts as 50 governing capacity. So we will have to be careful how many states we make because we don't have state limit anymore. You can make as many states as you want, but as the nation grows bigger, we won't be able to state everything because of the governing cap. So what happens when you actually go over the governing cap? The penalties are fairly severe actually. There are scaling penalties which at 100% over the governing capacity limit, you will get 100% staff cost modifier, 100% advisor cost modifier, plus 50% aggressive expansion, minus 50% improved relations, and plus 20% core creation cost. I don't need to tell you how big these penalties are. I think if we do a regular world conquest, the governing cap will increase with techs and ideas and we won't have to deal with penalties. But if you are going for a super fast world conquest, you are going to have some serious issues. Since the base value for governing capacity, even with the government rank, is fairly low, there are a lot of modifiers that affect this calculation. In the previous patch, we had a lot of state limit modifiers, and since state limit doesn't exist anymore, almost all of the state limit modifiers have been changed to governing cap modifiers. Admin tech that used to give more states now give more governing capacity. We can get 1700 extra governing capacity from admin tech alone. That last one at tech 31 gives plus 500, so hitting that last tech might be more important now. Earlier admin tech was useful only till tech 27 for admin efficiency or tech 29 for the last idea group, but that might not be the case anymore. Administrative and expansion ideas finishers used to give more states as well. Now admin ideas give plus 25% governing capacity, while expansion ideas finisher gives minus 10% autonomy in territories. So not directly affecting governing cap, but it still means you can leave more provinces as territories and they will contribute a little bit more. A lot of governments start with extra governing caps, such as Ming gets plus 300 from Celestial Reform, Ottoman's government gets plus 150, Sardam gets plus 250, and so on. Also, the Tier 6 government reform, L'État c'est moi, that used to give plus 5 states now gives plus 250 governing capacity. And on the other spectrum, the Prussian monarchy has a minus 50% governing cap modifier. Then there are a few local modifiers you can apply. The courthouse and the town hall buildings now also give governing capacity modifiers. Courthouses will give minus 25% province governing cost, and town halls will give minus 50% province governing cost. So be prepared to build these buildings basically in every high dev province. There's also a new manufacturing building called State House that gives minus 20% modifier to statewide governing cost, which is fairly significant. And the modifier becomes minus 40% if the province has paper, glass, or gems as trade goods. However, since you can only build one manufactory in one province, you will have to think about it a little bit more. I think the new meta is going to dictate building state houses in every province with a paper, glass, or gems trade good. Then there are unique modifiers you can get for certain nations, such as Great Britain gets 10% governing capacity from national ideas, and Russia gets plus 33% governing capacity from the Age of Revolution bonus. Apart from all these modifiers, you can also click on Expand Administration on the Government Reform tab. It costs 20 reform progress for 20 governing cap, and the cost increases 20% for each additional click. So once you have passed all the reforms, you can just use the reform progress to keep getting more governing cap. And it doesn't seem like you have a cap on how many times you can expand administration. I should also mention merchant republics here. In prior patches, merchant republics had a cap of 20 stated provinces, which was very stifling to say the least, to almost any type of gameplay. This restriction has now been removed, and instead, merchant republics get plus 25% weight to stated development. So if you state anything, it costs you 25% more in governing capacity. However, they also get minus 25% weight to dev in trade companies. So development in trade companies and territories is equal for merchant republics, which is amazing. Now you can play as Venice, conquer Mamluks and Tunis, and just trade company the whole area. This will open up a lot of different ways to play merchant republics. So if you just look at the base governing cap numbers, it seems very restrictive, but overall, when you take into consideration all the modifiers in game, the governing cap isn't that restrictive. It will still force us to play a little bit different that we are used to in previous patches, but I think it will add an extra dimension to playing the game and make us think a little bit more before expanding. One important thing to note is that unlike the previous corruption from territories modifier, the new governing cap mechanic applies to playing tall as well, as you will dev your provinces and that will count towards the governing cap. However, you can mitigate it more easily by building town halls, courthouses, and state house buildings. Now, I haven't played a full playthrough in 1.30 patch yet as it just came out, but I think this new governing capacity mechanic will make mid to late game a bit more interesting. I'm curious to know, what do you all think about this new mechanic? Do you think it's too restrictive for world conquest, or are you just happy that corruption from territories is gone now? Leave a comment to share your opinions. You were watching a Radio Rush Guide. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you all in the next one.